lunch session is the one where you get to have a little snooze, then you might like to just, I need a toilet break and go now, because I actually want to work you hard this afternoon, because what we want to talk about is so critical that if we miss it, I think we miss the trajectory that our church needs to go on. I've been involved in children and family ministries for quite a number of years, and I have seen a change in the last, say, 5 to 8 years that is revolutionising the way we think about ministry. When we look at our end result, we can't have kids walking away from our churches anymore. To me, it's unacceptable. Why are they doing that? Is because often it seems like a disconnected part of their world. And when we really look at the facts that we have in front of us, it's not about the church doing more, it's about the church thinking differently. So what you're going to hear today is not about a to-do list that's going to be bigger than your current to-do list. It might actually shrink your current to-do list and make you more effective in the long term. When I get a group of 10 young people standing in front of me, the current reality, the current trend, is that 8 of those young people will not make it through into their mid-20s in our church environment. So when I put these 8 or 10 children in front of me, and I have to choose which 8 are going to walk away, I don't know how to choose. And when I put those 10 children in front of parents, and I did this in our main auditorium, I brought 10 children in and their leader, and I said that 8 out of this group will not make it in our faith community beyond 25. Then when I asked the congregation to choose which ones would walk away, who did I see take the biggest gasp? Their parents. Because if your child is standing up and they're 8, everything in you says, not my child, please, I want my child to be in a faith community. But as a church, our current reality is we don't always think in terms of family. We think in terms of program. So what I want you to understand today is we're not talking program, we're talking strategy. You see, a program is a pre-prescripted idea which can sit on top of strategy. But our strategy drives our everyday thinking. It drives our methodology, which changes so much over the course of time. The way we do things will always change, but what we're aiming for never changes. We always want to have children in a faith relationship with their Creator. We want them to own it for themselves. So let me just find out from you, how many of you have children in the 0 to 12 age group? Great. Okay, we have to get this right, particularly for you. Your children are walking through that journey right now. What about the 12 to 18-year-olds? Okay. We need to come alongside you in a slightly different way, but you need us probably more than you've ever needed, as in us in the church community thinking along the lines of family. We need to be as a church standing alongside you. What about the 18 to 30-year-olds, the young adults? Yes? Absolutely. You need to be partnering with us. We need to be partnering with you, because all the lifetime decisions that your kids are making happen in this age group. And where is the voice of the church other than saying, do this, do that? Where can your young adults come alongside and go, I'm wrestling with this. I'm not sure about that. You see, when a church thinks about family and family think about the church, it changes the way we strategize, because we want to actually work together. Well, let's just cycle back and think about your child. So from 0 to 18, how many weeks do you think we have with our kids? Primarily when they're in a home, we say 18-year-olds move out. My 21-year-old moved out today. So, I'm going, woohoo! No. Actually, my husband blames me. He says, you were the one that said to him, if you ever feel like moving out and discovering, your own space and whatnot, we'll support you in that. And he goes, you've kicked him out. I go, yeah, basically. He's a good kid at this time. So 0 to 18, we have our children primarily living in our homes in this age group. How many weekends or how many weeks do you think we have with our kids? How many weeks? So on their phones.
400.
400, going up. Okay, we have 936. I have this jar in my office. This reminds me that is our season of influence directly with our children who are living in our homes. Now, who are the most influential people carrying these 936? Mum and Dad. So Mum and Dad walk the journey, and we as ministry leaders get the privilege, hear me? The privilege to join them in the journey. The journey is not about us. Now the hardest group to actually understand that, I need to put it out there, it's youth pastors. Okay, youth ministry. Now Mike's joining me soon, we are good friends, and we've had this conversation. Yeah. The reality is that we have, thank you, these 936 weeks. Now if you don't want to carry around a jar of marbles, we have the Legacy Marble app. And it's an app that you can go into and you can download that. You can put your child's birthday on there, and then what it does is it calculates how many weeks, how many, it's months, weeks, days and minutes you have until your child turns 18. And so it counts down all the time. Down, 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 down. Okay, so how many feeling freaked out now? Yeah, absolutely. Now, the idea is not to cause major stress. The idea is, behind that, is when you know how much you've got left, you're more intentional with what you have now. When you know how much you've got left, you're more intentional with what you have now. Now think of that in terms of a parent. When you know that your child's going to leave home at, say, well for us, our son today, Liam, at 21, I can then pace out what I want to make sure he has by the time he leaves home. It's no good as he's walking out the door going, hey Liam, remember, make wise choices, do this, do this, do this. It's gone. My influence changes. We have 2 adult daughters as well who chose not to come with us to Australia but live in New Zealand. And so we've got a 25-year-old and a 23-year-old. They're both teachers. One is married, and she's about to have our first grandchild in 6 weeks' time. And so here's me going, okay, what has she learnt about life, about parenting, about everything? And because she's going to be passing that on to her daughter. And so, because they always know it these days. They know whether they're going to have a boy or a girl, and I'm going, what's up with that? Life's so different. Where's the surprise? And she goes, Mum, get with the times. Okay, but anyway, so I'm looking and going, what have I passed on and what's she going to pass on? Because that is where we actually pass on the legacy. The faith journey is not mine. She's living her own faith journey right now. But what I need to know is who is around about her in her faith journey. Now we are delighted that all 3 of our children are connected into a local church. But just because they're there doesn't mean they own their own story. So we've got to be looking and going, if we're strategizing, how do we get the kids to not just be in that environment, but to own their story? Because here's what I know, Janine will pass on her faith story as it is to her daughter. So I want to make sure that her faith story is vibrant and that she is growing in that area. So while I'm a parent over here, my influence directly over her has finished. My influence around about her is accelerating because I know the time factor. When you know how much time you've got left, you're actually more intentional with what you have now. I've found as a parent and as a pastor, I've been far more intentional about the time that we have with our children. As a parent, the 936, as a ministry leader, we have on average about 40 hours with a young person during a year. So if you think about your 52 weeks of the year, by the time you take off, a couple for holidays, a couple for sickness, we have about 40 hours. Now I have a little box here that I have 52, actually there's 54 because it sat in the box easier. Oops, I keep throwing that at you, Kylie. So we've got 52 marbles here, and so each of my staff had this on their desks. And I go, you are losing your marbles. Every week, we take one out, and it's gone. We never have that again. Next week, we never get that back. And we go through our whole year. So when you look at our year, are we being intentional with the time that we have? And when we know how much time we have left, we're more intentional with what we have now. So we start to think more strategically. I want to move you from the idea of thinking program to thinking strategy. Because strategy happens over time. If I threw out balloons to you right now and asked you to blow them up, okay, you'd all know what to do. Put them to your mouth, blow them up, tie them off, and then the balloon's done. How did you know that? Who taught you? I don't think you could probably go back and go, oh, I remember this person here taught me that skill. You just know it. You go, funniest thing, how do I know how to do that? Because over time, you learn things. Now here's the bite for us. Over time, we learn things that are positive. Over time, we learn things that are negative. So think about our home situation. If over time we learnt that Monday through Saturday, we lived very differently to Sunday. What is the assumption, even the subconscious assumption, that you will come up with? That is where the real action happens, and this is what we do on the weekend. And this is what I'm finding with young people as I'm talking to them about their faith journey, is that they realise there was a disconnect here. Because they knew what they did there, that was a formulaic thing, it was programmed. Here was more of the relationship stuff, and they looked to their parents, and their parents gave them that example. Now, you take the young person there and you step over here and talk to their parents, and you'll hear them say, I want them to have a faith story all of their own. Why don't they come up with that? Because what they see and what they hear is often very different. Now, it's no parent, welcomes a brand new baby into the world, looks at them and go, I can't wait to stuff your life up. It just does not happen. We have the hopes and the dreams for our children. And the reality of those of us who are parents will know that so often those dreams are shattered through health things, through decisions your kids make. I say to my kids, there's one verse in the Bible that you should actually have on your wall because it saved you so many times. Do you know what that verse might be?
Shall not kill.
Absolutely. Thou shalt not kill. Because there are times when I want to say, what planet were you on? No, I go, that's from your father's side of the family. But we know that there's heartbreak. Our dreams will always not be fulfilled, but then it's our dream. What about their dream? What about thinking how we actually can influence and help them discover what faith is for themselves? That changes the way we do home, and that changes the way we do church. So I guess the basic assumption for us at Crossway was to make a conscious decision to do less for children, and that's all children, and more for families. Think about that. Less for children and more for families. Here was one of our journeys, is that we had a camp, and it was a really good kids camp. And I was watching the first year I came to Crossway. We were running around getting ready for camp. We had a great time. We had about, 75, 80 kids at camp and a whole bunch of leaders. Wonderful time. And I looked back in at Crossway and knew there was another 500 back at Crossway. And going, we've put all our energy into these kids. And we've ignored some of those kids there, but we also ignored parents. Oh, we told parents what we did. Oh, it was so good. We did this, we did that, we did that. We never invited parents into that conversation at all. So I took the most wonderful step that I did. I'm known as the pastor that killed the kids' camp. And so I said, actually, no more. That was our last camp. And my team were shocked, going, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? This has just been a part of our history forever. And I'm going, let's look at those kids. That weekend was significant, but there was a whole bunch that never got to experience that. But what's the trajectory? If we're not incorporating parents into this, we should be doing more to actually support the family, because they have the 936 weekends, okay, 936 weeks in the life of a child. We want to influence over time, and the one-off camp, as great as it was, what say if we took 33 families, well, the first one was 25 was my goal, but 33 we maxed out, 33 families, and we worked on family. Think of the impact over 52 weeks. And we invest one weekend, okay? So I'll just put one weekend there so I help you remember. And here's what we discovered. When we had kids in the room with their parents, we talked about family values, we talked about faith, we asked parents to tell stories to their kids, we asked kids to tell stories to the parents. We helped them learn to pray together. We invested one weekend, and we have got 52 weekends times 33 impact over that. We have given parents a resource that they can actually take and use over and over and over again. You see the difference? A different dynamic. We actually did go back and we put some social events in for the kids, the one night sleepover and all of that. And so we tried to make sure that we catered for some of that side. But our strategy said, as much as we love this, we're choosing that. Because partnering with parents is everything for us. Because our season is only a short season with them. Families will move out of our church, will come in. Kids will engage and disengage at different levels, but they still live with mum and dad, probably until they're 18 or a little bit older. So here's our potential that has been untapped. When we think program, we think of our kids here, and you can see I'm an artist. You didn't put that in my bio. Well, what we do is we sort of think program, go, what can we do for the kids? When we're thinking the strategy here, we're going, what can we do? And we'll call this the family. And then the family take it, and what they do is that they emphasize the things that are valuable to them, and they engage in a personal story over and over and over again. So every week matters. Every week matters. We say to parents, everything you do matters. I remember talking to a dad, and he was saying to me, Margaret, my kids are 8 and 10. I think I've missed the boat. And I'm going, oh no, you're standing on the boat. You've just got to take it off, let it go. I don't know the boating terms, but to take the rope off and sail out there, mate. I go, have you ever prayed with your kids? And he looked at me and he goes, well, I go, no, truth. And he goes, I don't know how. And I go, welcome to the majority of families. And so as a church, we've got to be talking into that space over and over again. How do you do this at home? We talk about evangelizing in our community, but what about our homes? What are we doing in our homes? We know that about 75% of our parents who are regular in church never pray or read their Bible with their children. 75%. They get busy, lots of different things, or they don't know how. And those are the ones that are committed. So no wonder our kids come up with the assumption that there's two worlds and you can choose it. When they realise it's part of our DNA, it's our fabric, it's what we call subconscious competency. They learn it over time and it becomes part of who they are. Because so much of what we do with our kids, we're at the top here is what they know. I want to know what they know, but more importantly, I want to know what they think. Which means asking questions. I want to know what they feel. And I really want to know what they believe. So we spend so much time up here and going, what do we know? But if we start delving down into here, then we're actually asking for their input. We're saying, so when you're in this situation, what does it really mean? What do you think about? We had a kid a couple of weeks ago who came into, again, our children's ministry. These are all transferable over all age groups. But this was one that was just very real. He came in, he's grade 6, and he put his hoodie over his head and he sat in the corner of our room. Now there's lots of children around. I noticed him and I watched and I watched. And I went up alongside him and I said, what's up? Nothing much. I could see he was crying. So I said, something has really broken in your world for you. And he goes, my bird flew away. Now, again, as an adult, go, bird flew away, well, just go and get another one. I mean, I'm not a bird person at all. I think they should all fly away. But I thought, no, okay, Margaret, think about the kid, Okay, so I come alongside him and I go, so what did Mum and Dad say? I can have a new one. And I go, it won't be like the old one, will it? He goes, no, at all. And what we had in that little dialogue, he said, you've come into my space. You come into my space. I said, well, kids' space is a place where we care when birds fly away. Because we're part of your wider circle. And I go, Mum and Dad, they want you to be happy. They want to provide another bird for you. But it's okay to say, I want my old one back. Now, he may not ever fly back. But we want to know, well, I want you to know that we care. Because what it is, it's a partnership. It's working together. It's saying what happens at home does matter. It's no use saying to a kid, oh, I trust God no matter what, if we're not interested in what's happening in their world when their birds fly away. And that's the same true for all ages. If we're not interested in what's happening in their world, we can never come alongside and influence their world. But where do kids get a chance to talk about what's happening in their space? When parents know that we will come alongside from the church angle and go, what is it that we can be doing to help you? We are for you. I say to my team, parents are friends, not food. If you've seen Nemo, you will know that the sharks were told they're not allowed to eat the other fishes. We're not there to actually battle with parents. We're there to come alongside parents, even those who do not have a faith story of their own. Some parents come alongside with, the kids are still, they're coming along with a friend. We support what a parent says as long as the child is not in danger. Right? We go, yeah, Mum and Dad are you have to listen to what they say. But then we actually help them ask the question back of Mum and Dad, so Mum and Dad know what they think, feel and believe. All right, let's do a little activity here today. What I want you to do, Kylie, can you pass some of that around? Is I want you to get a little, sort of a big marble size of yellow. And what I want you to do is to make something that symbolises what you do at church. What is part of your role at church? And then with the red, when that comes, something that symbolises something that you value at home. So we've got church, it's going to be yellow, and we have the red, it's going to be something at home. Yes, would you like to do those things? This is fun stuff.
Explain that again? What you do with
The these ones? Yep. So yellow is something that symbolises your ministry at church. So it might be with kids, it might be, well, whatever you're doing at church, something that symbolises your church. It might be a Bible you want to make. And then something that symbolises something you value at home. It might be fun, it might be coffee, it might be burgers, whatever. Now kids would take the whole container, but what we're going to do, this is actually different to Play-Doh, it's called Magic Clay. Now I'm going to do, can you catch it there? It actually feels really nice on your hands. Here's the other one. Great, so just take about a marble size around out. And what it does is actually when this dries, it dries hard. And what the kids found though, and I didn't realise that while it's soft it really bounces. So you give it to kids and it's bouncing everywhere. Okay, so make something there that symbolises something from church. Might be music. Faces. And you're not allowed to talk to people or share. You do this if you want to. Is anyone still waiting that would like me to throw some magic? No, it doesn't have to be put down. So we're going to Facebook them all. I guess you read that.
The yellow one is your ministry in the church. This one is what you call it family.
And for some of you, you haven't played with Play-Doh for a very long time. Now, because not everyone has the gift of interpretation, you might need to tell the person next to you what you have made. And then they've got to smile and go, absolutely.
Oh, here it is.
How you going? Great. Fantastic.
Small.
Yeah. Now that's how basic. So that will make anyone's look good. This one's supposed to be on the plate because we like meals together. It looks like the smiley face. Kind of. Okay, now take a moment just to tell the person next to you just the thing that you've made and describe what your creation is. No, it's over there. Right, so you've got your home, whatever that is. And I was just saying mine both look very similar. This is actually a plate with food on it. Because my husband's a good cook, I choose not to. I like to give him an area to excel in. In other words, I don't like cooking very much, he does. And then the smiley faces of children as they come in, and parents as they come into church. My dream is that everyone would run into church. So when they run into church, it's really quite fun for me. I'm going, yes, this is a great place. But so I want you to take your red for home and your yellow for the church, and I want you to put them together. Like that. Just set them somehow together, on top of each other or beside each other. Now when I'm talking with a lot of church leaders, this is what they see as partnering with parents. They go, we are connected to parents. They come into our church, so, oh guess what, we'll do a family series once a year. Doesn't cut it, right? Because we still have red and we still have yellow. Or we're going to tell the parents what we talked about on Sunday in our children's ministry. Well, it doesn't cut it if all we're doing is telling them information. They get enough information. We have to engage them on another level. So this is where strategy comes in. We have the red of the family, which is the heart, the unconditional love of family, and we have yellow, the light of the world, the church. If we are truly going to partner with parents, we have to change what it looks like to be church and that will change what it looks like to be parents. So we're going to take our two pieces together and we're going to work them together. Okay, so it does mean you've got to smash what you just created. Sorry if some of you need counselling over that. So, we start to work at it and we do a few changes. But guess what? It's still red and yellow. Okay, it's still red and yellow. Family still does what family does. Church still does what church does. We're a little bit more together. But if you keep working this over and over again, you'll see something that happens. What actually happens? Absolutely. The colour changes. So the colour turns to orange. So not only is orange my favourite colour, but it is our strategy. Our strategy is to change what church looks like, change what family looks like, redefine that so we are thinking the same and we look a little differently because we actually start what we call think orange. What we've discovered, the more we've worked on that, we've changed some of our methodology because our thinking is different. To think orange is a strategy, it's a thought process, it's not a program. I'm not here to promote orange, I'm here to promote a different way of thinking when it comes to partnering with parents. How does that look? A couple of examples. One of it, you can just keep playing with this because if you like to, it's fun. Part of one of the changes that we made was when we were looking at our high school camp. We decided, yes, it was still valid to take high school students away for camp. It's great to get them out of an environment and to actually we have a whole week with our young people. But we decided that we needed to keep parents not only informed but engage them in the conversation. So what do parents need to know? They needed to know what are the sort of things we're going to be doing at camp. Not that it's just going to be fun, because that's a given. Youth ministry is fun. You do things that are fun. Parents want to know how legal it is, but we try not to let them know that. No, they just want to know, does a young person want to be there, and the fun factor is where they know it's going to happen, but they also want more for their buck, as it were. This is a whole week. It's a whole marble out of their lives that we are giving over as parents into a youth ministry. So we decided that we needed to let them know some of the content that we were going to cover. But not just we were covering this, but why. So what we've observed at home, what we know about young people. So what we're doing is, instead of we are telling, which is what we call broadcasting, we're engaging in a conversation which said, we've observed this about young people. And immediately a parent stepping into that zone go, oh, I've seen that in my child. Oh, I want that for my child. We let them know what a win looks like for us. If a win is a meaningful, life-changing conversation with a young person, they know that everything we're doing in programming will actually drive towards that. Even the fun foam pit will drive towards that time when we can have that young person in a meaningful conversation. We're not just there about fun. That's part of the journey, because that's what kids like and it's part of the relational pathway. But it helps us get down into this place. When we've played together, we can pray together. It's no use us walking in there going, oh, we're just going to pray, let's get deep down and spiritual. If a kid is still in the zone that they need to build trust with you, you need to play it. You need to get out there in the mud. That's why I love going for those sort of things. The time you can actually get alongside them in that way. But parents needed to know that what our goal was, so that we both had the same expectations from the camp. We discovered that we needed to let them know daily what was going on, not to tell them who's done what. We said what happens at camp stays at camp, in the sense of who's misbehaving, because they all think it's their children and no one else's. But what they do, what we wanted to them, is to let them know how to pray for their children and what to say when they got back. Because when parents ask this question that they often do, and you probably asked it too, what did you do at camp? What did you do at church? That is the dumbest question ever, because you're going to get the same answer. Nothing. Stuff. What we want to do is engage in a more meaningful conversation, because we want to set the parents up to win. So everything we do is setting parents up to win. So we let them know this is how you can pray for your child. If you're texting your child or Facebooking your child, this is what you might be asking them. This is what you might be saying. And then when our kids come back from camp, before the buses arrive back with children on them, we have parents meeting in the room together and we go, this is what happened at camp. This is what we've seen. This is how you can form a conversation. So when the kids got back, it really wasn't about just what did you do at camp, and then they got frustrated because their kid was tired and grumpy, and then the parents say this dumb thing. Well, if that's what you get from camp, you're not going again next year. You go and listen to parents, that's the dumbest thing ever. Then you see this little snigger all around the room. Okay, confession, who's ever done that? And hands were going up all over the room. I go, the wise thing is for you to understand they're tired. They're exhausted. They're still processing some of the stuff that God's been doing in their lives. So here as parents is how you can come alongside them and support them in that journey. They didn't come away as little rebels and back as angels. They came away as themselves. They're coming back as themselves, but God has intervened in the process at various levels. You as a parent will know what God's been doing when you ask wise questions, because that's your job, to ask wise questions, probing questions, but it's all about their faith journey, not about the behaviour. If you want behaviour, kids know what they can and can't do. That's not an issue. It's really what's going on underneath here and what's their story telling them about their faith journey. So that was one area. Another area we decided to partner with parents is we have what we call in our children's ministry, Big Step Sunday. We knew that when we asked children to make a step to follow Jesus, that we had to get our language right. Asking Jesus to come into your heart is a gross concept for most children. Where will he fit? Does he pop out when you go to the toilet? I've been asked. And go, ooh, do I eat him? Some of that's from the younger kids, but let's just think about it. We had to form our language carefully. So we tried all of that, and we could have a great response from children. We know how to do that as children's pastors. But here's what we know. Parents know their kids better. So what if we formed the words, put the message out in a way kids could understand, but we had parents in the room as well? What say that happened? And then when we ask the children who would like to follow Jesus, and we have a little tick form that we use, and I'll explain that in a moment, but we said, well, when we put the challenge to the kids, who will they talk to? Mum and Dad. So we had this idea, the children's team were on it, yes. Slight awkward thing, parents are upstairs in the auditorium. Dale, senior pastor, let me get you a coffee, let me sit. Told him this big idea and I go, here's the win for the church. Parents will actually know what's happening in the spiritual lives of their kids. We're setting parents up with language that they can talk to their children about their faith journey. We give them a shared experience, but this is what will happen. Your auditorium will not have all parents in there. And what I love about Dale's response, he said, I want to partner with parents no matter what that means for us, program-wise. He said, I'm going to support parents to leave the auditorium and to come downstairs with you. And here's what he did. Partway through the service, at just the right time, we programmed it together, he says, oh, have you got a parent, if you're a parent and a child from grade 1 to grade 6, can you stand up right now? They'll stand up because they do as they're told in church. And he goes, today is a very special day. Now we told them all about Big Step Sunday, but parents were doing what parents do. And so they were in the auditorium and he said, this is too important for you to miss. So here's what I want you to do, whether your child's made that step of faith or not. I want you to go downstairs and join your children. You won't want to miss it. And dismiss them. Now tell me, what parent's going to sit down after that? They all come out and downstairs, and we're crammed into our ministry space, and there we're able to present this gospel message to the kids in a way that they understand. And parents are sitting there going, oh yeah, we get it in a very simple way. And then when we ask the kids to actually make a response, everybody in the room gets a little card and they can circle in, today for the first time I want to ask Jesus to be my forever friend. And we switch them around so it's not always the first one on the list. Another one is, I'm already following Jesus as best as I can. And the other one says, I need to think about this a little bit longer. So we ask everyone to fill it in, and then we just divide them off according to what they've coloured in, and parents are right there with their kids. And then those parents, we ask the parents to go and stand with their children, make sure they're there. Those that have already made that decision or still thinking about it, stand and pray with their children where they are. And those that have made the first time decision come into another area with us. And then what we do is we group them in family groups sitting down, and I said, this is the most exciting time for you parents, because I'm handing over to you now. You can pray with your children and introduce them to Jesus as their forever friend. And the very first time I did it, the parents' faces were, you're kidding me. What do I do? And it was just a shock, and I wasn't quite expecting that. And so, I don't know why, but anyway, I said, some of you are sitting there going, I don't know the words. I go, guess what? There are no special words. It's all about here. So then I coached through what sort of prayer you pray. And then I said, over to you. Remember, there's no magic words. This is a heart thing. And then I saw parents holding their children in their arms and praying with them. I saw kids cry, parents cry, and parents come and going, I can't believe I got to do that. How cool is that? And one dad that was said to me, because we said, if you need help, just wave out, we'll come to you. And he goes, I know the parents have to do it first, but can she pray for me, and then I can pray for her? And I'm going, okay. He said, because I want you to be my forever friend. Look, look, look. And he showed me his thing. He said, I really do. He says, I have never done this before. He said, but can I do it first? I've got to beat her. She was 8. So she said, all right, Dad, I'll pray for you. And she prayed for him. And it broke his heart. Her prayer was so honest. I really believe the Spirit of God speaks to our children really powerfully. Then he turned around and then he prayed for her. And so what an amazing moment. And we get to do this. And all the 35 years of ministry, I've never done it this way before. This is a season when we're thinking about less for children and more for families. And we're saying, parents, we're behind you. We will help you. We will give you the language. We will put the context there for you so that you can actually talk with your children. Because if you said, well, we'll do this when you get home, the majority of you wouldn't do it. Because it's that awkward thing, the card we ticked, but you're all in the same room doing it together. And we've rolled that out through baptism. I do not baptise children. Parents do. And I'm standing behind it, cheering them on. One lady saying to me, I can't do this. And I go, suck it up, you're going to, because you're going to thank me for this. Now, she's a volunteer of ours, and she said, but I want you to, Pastor Margaret. And I'm going, well, Pastor Margaret ain't going to do it, and there's no other pastor that will. And so she goes, all right then, and she gets in there. And when she comes out, I think I got totally drenched from her, because she said, I got to baptise my son. And I go, and you will carry that together all the way through your journey. So, as church leaders, as people who are responsible for programming and strategy, as parents, would you not want to be working together? Would you not want to see your parents win like that? And then what we've found is that the more we program in that way based on this strategy, the more parents are stepping into the zone and saying, I want to be part of Kids Space. I want to help in youth. I want to do this. I want to be connected. How best can I do this? For the first time in the history of the 3.5 years I've been leading at Crossway, we have more parents serving in our children's ministry than we do teenagers. And it's not that I don't want teenagers, I want the mix. I want parents stepping into that space. I want grandparents stepping into that space. We have parent conversations where we say, let's open up a conversation and talk about what it is to parent. And in a few minutes, I will just go through some of the 5 principles that we use that exist for parenting right across the age range. And when we create a common language, we're starting to communicate in a way people get. So when I say each of these phrases, parents are starting to get it. And through a message, when a pastor will say, but this is like widening the circle conversation, you get that, we get it. Because we're all on the same page. We're thinking together. We've got a strategy. Oh, that was a bit red. We have a strategy that says what happens happens at home is as equally as important, if not more so, than what happens at church. But what happens at church can activate what happens in the home, and our parents win. And here's what I'm believing with all my heart, is that kids will have a faith journey that's real, because they have a place to say, I don't know about this. I don't know that I believe in prayer. And families can get around and they can pray together. They can navigate the uncertainty, because over time we're being intentional and we're saying the same thing. I think that when Adam and Eve sinned, Jesus could have come straight away and solved everything. Do you believe that? God could have said, okay, Jesus, there's been a glitch in the system. Can you go fix it now? And everything has changed. I actually think God wants to teach us something over time that's too important for us to learn in a moment. So why would we think that because we say Jesus loves you, he wants to be your friend, do you want that now? Kids actually learn this over time. Over time, over time, over time. And they come to that point when it's very real for them. And then we journey with them as they're still making that journey, because they're learning things over time that are going to actually hold into their DNA of who they are. Not just because we told them, but because they actually believe it. See, I don't want them to believe the Bible because the Bible is true. I want them to believe the Bible because Jesus believed in the Bible. And anyone, I stole this from Andy Stanley, so credit to him, he says that anyone that can predict his death and his resurrection and can pull it off, he's worth following. I want kids to follow Jesus because they know him, because he's real for me. If what I'm presenting to my kids or my youth or my young adults is not real in my life, how on earth will it be real in theirs? Out of any age in history, our kids need authenticity. And if parents are able to be equipped to be authentic with their children, they do not have to be perfect. As I say to parents, the kids already know you're not perfect. They tell me that every Sunday. And I ask them great questions. I love having the pastor's kids in my group. Oh, I find out great info. No, it's just that we are normal. It does not, we don't have to put on this face that says, oh, that everything's great. I asked the kids one Sunday, how many of you had an argument on the way to church? How many of you mum and dad had a fight on the way to church? Then as soon as you got to church, it was all happy, smiley faces. And a good half of them, now some of them were probably just faking it because it was fun, but that happens, and I go, that is what we call a normal family. But what isn't normal is when we go and talk about that, and we say, this is how this made me feel. We just go on as if, we should just do the right thing. This is segregating what we do here from what happens here. That's why I'm passionate about partnering with parents. Well, I want to make you do a little bit of work now. I want you to think of one thing that you do in your church currently and write that down in your paper. Then what I want you to do is to think, if you were thinking strategically around partnering with parents, how would you morph that idea? So you've got the idea here, so I think, okay, for us, one of them was camp. Then we go, okay, parents are around here. What can we do in this zone that would acknowledge the part that parents play? What would we do differently if we had a strategy that said what happens at home is equally, if not more important than what happens at church? So you're allowed to talk, but I would love for you to do this, to write one thing that you do. It may even be Sunday service. You have a Sunday service. If you really thought about home and church, what would you do differently? All right? Take away budget, take away any leadership issues you may have or anything like that, or space. What would you do differently if you had the capacity to do so? Over to you. And tell me not kids, Kylie, because they would have been blah, blah, blah. If you need help, raise your hand. Oh, thank you. I need that. And then Lisa's training says, you're on a hitch of your heart. Then we do this for 60 degrees on
Just the arrow.
Yeah, that's right. Take 10
Yeah, that's right. So I got that. Still around. If I'm doing How many of you can see how you can easily reimagine your
to actually incorporate a different strategy? How many of you can reimagine what you're doing now with a different strategy, a few different things that tweaks to it to get a different result? Yeah? That's great. Okay, I want you to just sort of keep thinking in that sort of zone and to push through there to go, push past the what ifs, push past through, oh, well, how do I pull this off? One of the things we started doing at Crossways soon after I arrived was saying we're partnering with parents. We're partnering with parents. What we didn't tell the parents was how we were going to partner with them. We wanted to get the language right first. We wanted to give a language that parents were actually used to hearing. We have it on our t-shirts, on the back, in our kids ministry. All the time, we're partnering with you, we're partnering with you. And then we unpacked our strategy, not in a big strategic launch, but it was, oh, guess what? This is what we've decided to do. Oh, guess what? And we slowly are letting parents know what partnering together actually looks like. And that was helpful too for my senior leader, because I still don't think Dale knows what I have in mind and where we're going. He's on long service leave, and he said to me just before he left, he goes, if I come back and everything in this church is orange, I'm holding you responsible. And I go, I'll be welcoming you back dressed in orange. Yeah. I know, I always have a bit of orange there. An orange jacket. Yeah. So what it is thing, you don't have to do a massive launch. We call it soft launch. And what you do is you change your thinking and let your methodology roll out of that. The moment you announce something, oh, we're doing something brand new, parents are going to be a bit more suspicious, and they're going to go, here's another program. It is not a program. It is the way we think about what we are doing. So when I'm thinking orange, it will look very different in my church context than your church context, because my families are different than your families. Their situations are different, because I will take the read of what's happening in the homes of those who are connected already with our church environment. Size, location, that has a lot to do with the programming, but the strategy, what goes underneath the way of thinking, is consistent regardless of location, regardless of size, regardless of denomination, regardless of who's on the team. It'll be the reflection of who you're currently working with. So let the strategy drive your methodology, and you'll see a big difference. And when you make the big announcement, it's more or less like, so that's what we've been doing. And the resistance is very little. What I've noticed is we have 4 categories of where parents sit. We have ones that are aware. They're aware of what we do, but they don't really care a whole lot. As much as it grieves me, I know that some parents bringing their children into Crossway on a Sunday morning or their youth Friday night want us to babysit their kids. I had somebody say to me, we were closed for 2 weeks, only 2 weeks in January. And they said, well, I can't come to church. I go, why not? I don't know what to do with my kids. Don't know where to put my kids. And I'm going, really? Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not kill. Let me talk to you about what it means to partner. But, you know, and in all honesty, we have to also look at the programming within the service and go, are we actually making it easier for parents to have their children with them? But we know that there are people that are aware of our ministry. There are people that are involved. They will come, they will do what we ask them to do, but it's all about us prompting and then they respond. There are some that are engaged, that are really moving in a little head with us, and they're in rhythm with us. They get us. So as we say stuff, they go, oh yes, oh yes. We have a grade 5 and 6 leadership group that we run on a Friday night. Now I have one staff person oversighting that. We have 60 kids on most Friday nights there. Who are the volunteers? Parents. You cannot be part of our Kids in Leadership Now group unless your parent will come and do a stint serving alongside you. And what we're finding now is that we have so many parents coming because they want to be part of it. The kids do not care their parents are in the room. They haven't got to that stage yet. They love it. They love it. And so you've got parents that are really engaged in that way. When we have parents serving in our ministry, and here's what I've discovered in the last couple of years, even up to grade 6, who can be the suspicious age group of people, will come alongside. I've had a guy comes and says, hey Margaret, my dad's serving today. I go, wait, cool, how's that? It's really great. We have kids that come and tell me, I was here yesterday with my family and we set this up. So they set up our ministry, which normally takes about 3 to 4 hours to set up, to all our rooms. Parents are now coming in, 2 parents and 2 children come in, or well, they bring 2 parents bring their own children, and they come in and they do it in community. So the kids are telling me, I did this, you can thank me. And I go, absolutely. Great choice of activity. I love it. Now what it is getting a task done, but through a relational lens. Who are the people involved in that? Those are our engaged parents, who are really in this rhythm with us. But there's another group of parents, and they are the invested parents. To me, they're the parents that are almost one step ahead of us. They will come to me and go, this is what we're facing at home, this is what we think we might do. Is this what you would think would be a good thing? Or they're going, do you realise that children of this age are facing all of this? What can we do as a faith community to help others know how to navigate technology in the home? There's a big issue in our family. Now it takes a gutsy parent to come and go, this is a bigger issue than I can handle. How do we do this in community? So we have parents at different age or different stages. So I have almost like the donut diagram and going, okay, your invested parents are right in the middle. I know where they are, and then you've got your engaged, and you're involved, and then you're aware. So I'm not asking for an aware parent to act like an invested parent. I'm saying, oh, that's where you are. What that has meant for me is I'm not beating parents up because you're not here every single week. I need a vision cast for you. Why? You can catch up online, but our phrase is kids can't catch up online. Because what the kids have in the kids' church is not information, it's experience. And they can't get that online. So we go, it's important. That's why small group's important to us. Kids can't catch up online. Language precedes culture. I want a culture of consistency. I have to give language to parents. And leaders in our ministry need to have that same language. So you will hear around our hallways, great to see you. Kids can't catch up online. No, they can't. When we ring up, kids miss 3 weeks in a row. Get on the phone. Hey, how's it going? We've been missing you guys. We're having so much fun and we're learning so much. So, you know, we hear, oh, we got busy. Oh, yeah, that happens in families. We are aware of that. But we just want to remind you that it's really important. Kids can't catch up online. Oh, yeah. So we're hearing this language come through. But know where your parents fit. Okay, where do the parents fit in there? And don't beat them up when they're out there. Not everyone can do everything, but everyone can do something. So I'm asking for each parent, how do you take the next step forward? If it's for you praying with your child, can you try it one time? Have you ever tried to tell a Bible story to your child? Or talk to them about a story? Maybe you can step and take one step there. So what is your one step? So we have an email that goes out to our children's, or to families who have been in children's ministry, that remind them, you know, about 1:30 on a Sunday, if you've attended, boom, you get this email. If you haven't, you get the preface that says, sorry, we missed you. And so we try to get onto that. I've got to confess, sometimes it goes out on Monday because I haven't been quite organised. But we try and get it out 1:30 on Sunday. And what that does then is it reminds them, say, oh, this is the big idea. This is why we've taught what we've taught, because here's what we know. We've been talking about endurance. Kids want to give up. They want to give up music and soccer and all of this when it gets tough. Hey, we're no different parents. We want to give up too. So here's what we learned. Here's the bottom line. And here's what you can do as a parent. So this week, you know, talk to your kids around the meal table about when you wanted to give up and what did you do. So invite them into the story. Now we say that's a make it personal conversation. So we have 5 strategies that go through all parenting. I'm still working these 5 strategies. My daughter, I pray, will work these 5 strategies the moment her little one is born. Imagine the end is really important for us. If we're stuck in now, then we think it's all about now. Our kids are in that zone. You never let me go out. You forgot what happened last week. You got to go out. You always this. Now is where they are. We're the big people. We're the parents. We can imagine the end going, if we allow this now, what will the end result be? See, culture is not just about what you say you value. It's what actually happens. It's what you allow. So, if you allow a child to speak back to you all the time, as a young one, don't come to me surprised at 15 when they tell you where you can stick it. It's just If you allow it, they think it's normal, and then you'll go, oh no, and suddenly the stakes are a lot higher, and it's not cute anymore. So imagine if we go, well, that's the trajectory, so we want to come back in here. We don't speak like that, and we change the way of behaviour, but along with a vision of we're thinking just not now, but what's going to happen. We do that with spending, we do that with life, and actually, when our children are dedicated now, parents come to a class and they write a prayer for their child come 18. So they've got their tiny baby here, and we're going, what will it be like when your child's 18? You write them a message, and we're going to frame that, and we're going to give it to you so you can put it on the wall. Because they're going to hear that's your desire over and over again for their child. When children hear that, and hear that they have an end in mind, what that does is it actually lets you prioritise what's important and what you're just going to let go of. Great. There's 5 things here. I just thought, time. Okay. Fight for the heart. We all fight in families, but here's the little word that makes a big difference. We can fight with our family or fight for our family. You will find that there are things that come up, conflict. If you're fighting with its parent to child this way, I've got to win because I'm the parent, and we do that so often. But if we're fighting for their heart, we have a different end in mind. We have a different outcome, because here's where it can translate, is that our daughter, she had borrowed our GPS, and it's a time before smartphones and things like this, and she was brand new, she borrowed it, she parked on the front of our lawn and at home, and I said, Janine, you need to bring your car up the drive, darling. And she said, yeah. She didn't bring the car up, and the next morning I was driving out early to go to work. Her car was still out there, but I noticed the back window had been broken. And when I looked in the car, the GPS was gone. I couldn't tell what else had gone because it looked like a bedroom. But I go inside and go, what was in me was, I've just bought this thing. And you were told, I told you so, get that. So I go in and fight for the heart, and I go, honey, you're not going to like what I have to tell you, but your car's been broken into. So you're going to have to get up out of bed now, and you're going to have to go through and ring the police and identify what's been taken, and oh, by the way, you will be buying a new GPS. It's just what it is. I never said to her, I told you so. And I go, you know what, you're an early childhood teacher, your kids are going to need you on your game today. So as much as this is frustrating you and hurting you and upsetting you, you need to be in that space to give everything you've got to your preschoolers. Because you're an excellent early childhood teacher. I'd have you in my centre any day. And off I went to work, and off she went to work, and I got a text mid-morning that says, Mum, you knew I shouldn't have done that. But thank you for reminding me of who I am, not what I've done. I was going, thank you, God, because that was a fight for the heart moment. I could have easily stuffed it up. And yes, I have stuffed it up many times, but that occasion I didn't. So fight for the heart, not fight with them. Widen the circle. Who else is standing with your kids? As much as we are the most awesome parents, we cannot parent alone. There are times when your children will not talk to you because you're mum and because you're dad. It's not because they don't love you. They love you incredibly, but they can't talk to you. They need someone else's opinion. So we actually want to be intentional on who we have in our circle. Grandparents, aunties, uncles, who are trusted people. As pastors, we said to our kids, there are things that you can't talk to us about. What we want you to know is who are the safe people. We had people in our congregation that we said, anything you hear, anything at all you want to say about home or anything, go to these people. They are trusted. And we would name them. We would have them in our home. We would let the kids go over to their place. And there were times when those people came to us and said, you guys have got to watch what's happening, because your children are getting a message that you don't want them to hear. And so they reprimanded us. I would much rather that than to have, because I could do something about it then. I knew these people were for me and loved me and said, to work the hours you were doing is unacceptable when your children are counting on you and you're late for school. This was what I got snapped on. You're late for school every day, and you have this deal that you'll give them $1 if you're late. All you're doing is paying them off because you work it out that it'll actually be fine if you just give them $1. So they actually were part of the wider circle of our kids, reprimanded us as parents and helped us be better parents. Your kids have to know who to talk to when they can't talk to you. They will not tell you everything. Who's part of their wider circle, and be intentional about reinforcing that person, choosing that person. Who's speaking into the lives of your kids. If you worry about their friendships, you say, who am I allowing to speak into the lives of my kids? Don't say, don't be friends with that person. Put more friends into their lives who are saying the same thing as you, because that's what it means to have a loud voice. Make it personal. We're still learning as we're going along the journey. I'm still discovering who God is. I'm still learning what it means to follow Him. I'm still learning to trust Him. Why don't I actually invite my children into that conversation and tell them, I'm struggling right now. Or I'm just thinking, I want to trust God for this, but it's really hard. Can we pray as a family? Our kids think that our parents think they know it all, but our kids know better. So make it personal. Let them hear your faith story. Can they tell you? Can they tell me how you came to faith? Many can't. And the last one is create a rhythm. That is, sorry?
And with that also, you're being vulnerable to them, and so they know that they can be vulnerable to you too.
Absolutely. You're actually doing a pathway through vulnerability, and kids can pray for you in a very powerful way. So thanks for making that connection there. Create a rhythm means be intentional about the rhythm that we're putting into our lives. Do not be surprised if chaos reigns if you haven't put a rhythm in. Now, one of the cool things about rhythm is that you have drive time, you have meal times, you have hang time. How are you using all these times to cast faith or impart your faith into the lives of your kids through that story? So when you're driving, instead of abusing drivers around you, probably never do that. How can you use that time? I hate it when my kids got their own licenses because I lost the time to be in the car with them. Like, until you give me the answer, we're just driving round and around the block and I'll stop when I... It's using the times wisely. When you know how much time you've got left, you're more intentional with what you have now. This can be unpacked further in this book, Parenting Beyond Your Capacity by Kerry Newhoff and Reggie Joyner. But the reason I wanted to share those with you is these are common phrases that our parents will hear over and over again in our church and in our communication, and they can activate it because when we say widen the circle, they go, oh, I know what that means. And not all of a sudden, but over time they realise that we care about what happens at home. And faith isn't about just what it looks like on the outside. Faith is what's happening on the inside and how we journey with God one step at a time. And we're all figuring it out. So I'm loving the journey that I'm on, and Mike's going to come after the break and help us unpack a little bit more and of this whole journey and how we're actually trying to discover how do we partner effectively so parents win at home, kids have a faith that is theirs, and churches are a place that are helpful in our community. So thank you everyone. See you back here in a little bit.
We do have an activity break, but there are also some resources up here. I've been told that this one is fantastic, creating a lean small group culture, which is great. So if you want to come and have a look at those during the break, you're welcome to as well. But enjoy it, Papa, and we'll see you back here at 2:30.
Thanks guys, thanks for having me. I don't have any modelling clay, I'm sorry, but Margaret bought all the tricks. You know, oh, you're going to give me some. Thank you, Mary. What a guy, what a guy. I'll give this right back to you though. Great that you had Margaret in session 1, and Margaret's a great leader and thinker and practitioner around this sort of stuff, leading the way really, I think, in Australia in terms of especially thinking orange and some of the things that would have been shared with you this morning. Oh, not this morning, session 1, this afternoon. It's all blended into the one day, which is good. So I'm going to share a little bit. I'm going to get you guys thinking about your ministry context and what maybe some of has been shared already, and some of the things that I'll share as well. What does that look like into ministry context? So we'll try and land some of it. We'll try and get it being practical. We'll try and think some things through. In actually, what could this mean? With some of the paradigm shift into family ministry, what could it actually look like, you know, in what you do. So could we just like maybe just see who's in the room? Just chuck up your hand if you're involved in your children's ministry. Yeah, cool. What about youth ministry? Who's involved in youth ministry? Yeah, multiple hands going up. Yeah, that's great. And young adult ministry. Is anyone involved in it? Yeah, I love it. You went for all three. That's awesome. So,
Good generation.
Come on. Woo. Fantastic. All right, it's just good to know. So when I was growing up, I had a job at a bread factory, and it was a really interesting job. So interesting that I got to stand in the one spot every time, and I got to watch the bread come off the conveyor belt, and I got to put it in lots of six into this like little kind of like, you know, container thing, and then I stacked these little containers onto pallets, and that was my job. And one thing I learned about bread is that I learned it doesn't really matter if it's in the, you know, the kind of Woolworths home brand bread or the tip top, you know, extra, you know, expensive bread. It just was the same bread that came off the conveyor belt, and you put it into these little containers. You put the containers onto the pallets went into trucks, and the bread went all around, you know, the shops. And it was a really fascinating job. It was thrilling. You know, I loved it. You know, it was just unbelievable. It was where I first had coffee, because I used to work some night shifts, and I just was like, hey, there you go. There's a win from working at Tip Top. But it was like, no joke, legit the most boring job I ever did in my life. Okay? Because I just got the bread, came off conveyor belt, and then I went and put it into pallets, went to trucks, out to the shops. And sometimes I wonder, when we get involved in ministry, I wonder sometimes if our ministry and if our paradigm, how we work, can actually be a little like that. I wonder sometimes if we think, oh, what are the keys so that we can mass produce disciples? What are the things that we can do so that we can have young people, children going through young adulthood, and we can have these young people going through a conveyor belt where they learn everything they need to, it's all locked away, it's all great, and then boom, off they go, you know, into their life, into their world. And it's really fascinating, because I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we do look for these ways. How can we mass produce it? How can we make it easier? How can we, you know, do ourselves a favour? But the truth is that disciples aren't mass produced. You would know that. Think back to who's invested in your life. Think back to who the key influences were in your life. I'm sure there's youth leaders, I'm sure there maybe is a pastor, and I'm sure there's people along the way. And David Kinnaman, in his book You Lost Me, with a bunch of research that he did throughout interviewing young people in America, he said this quote, and it's stayed with me for years now. He said, disciples are not mass-produced. Disciples are handmade. Disciples are not mass-produced. Disciples are handmade. And it reminds me more of when my wife and I travelled in Europe, and we dipped down into Morocco, and we spent a week in a place called Fez. And it was just an amazing place. And we got to go to see how rugs are made. It was fascinating. Like, you got to sit in this like little kind of like house, and it was like full of people, and they were showing you how these rugs were handmade, and just the amount of time that goes into a rug, the amount of detail, just how it's woven and strengthened over time. And I was like, wow, that's really special. And when I think about the disciple-making process, when I think about, you know, a child, you know, all the way through to an independent adult, I think disciple-making is a handmade process. But sometimes we want to mass produce it, but actually it's handmade. And we need to think like that. That needs to be our starting point. And we call this relational discipleship. And relational discipleship is actually investing in the relationship of the person whom you disciple. And it is about the events that we do, church on Sunday, you know, your kids ministry, about youth on a Friday night, young adults if you meet midweek. It is about that stuff, because events are important, and it's an important time to gather and to celebrate and things like that. But it's also about the journey. It's about the journey of faith. It's about connecting up young people from all ages with significant adults. And having those young people invested in by these adults who want to love them, walk alongside them, be a role model to them. And I think you wouldn't disagree with me. I think you'd be like, yeah, that's it. That's right, that's good. But how do we actually kind of like craft that up? How do we get that done? And when I think about those relationships that are so important, one of the ones that can be overlooked is the parents. Parents, like, such an important relationship, such an important relational world. And Margaret, did you talk about the orange, like the red and the yellow? Were you across that? That's where we got the clay.
Yeah,
brilliant.
we're across.
So,
Just see if that they know.
oh, do you know?
Yeah. So who can tell me about the orange and the red and
The red and the yellow. Who remembers from the first session? What's the red and the
The
yellow?
red is the heart. The heart matters, the family, and the yellow is the light.
Yep. The church, the
The
light
church,
of the world.
the yellow is the church, and the red is the
Yep.
family.
And you come together and you get.
And it becomes orange.
That's awesome. That's
So
a
what
pass.
changes? What changes as we work together? Because there's a box of marbles riding on the spot. What changes when we work together?
Colour.
Intentional.
Strategy is what I'm looking for.
Goes from program to strategy. Yeah. All right. That's good. From program to strategy, because it's a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking, and that's really important. So sort of when we think about relational discipleship, when we think about the key relationships that are involved in the life of a young person, whether they're really young or through young adulthood, we do have youth leaders. They're key. They're important. I'm sure we've got influences at school. You think about your sporting club. You think about drama group. You think about those key adults that are in the life of your kids. They're there already. So that kind of like, for some of us will make us think, well, okay, cool, some of those people that are investing into the lives of our kids. But the one that sometimes we can't overlook is the parents. And parents are the primary disciples. That is what the research suggests. That's what it says to us. And there isn't a perfect family. And what's funny is sometimes when you get the photo frame, and in the photo frame is the picture of the perfect family, the stock photo. But it's not actually true, is it? If I looked at my family, I'm married. I've got 3 little kids. I've got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old. If I looked at my family and I looked at the stock photo, I'd be like, oh, there's a bit of discrepancy there. What's going on? Like my son, sometimes he just wants to pat his younger sister on the head, just so that he can let her know who's boss. It's kind of like, well, I don't know, it doesn't look like that's happening in the stock photo. Kind of looks too good to be true. But then if we look at the Bible and we look at the narrative in Genesis, you show me a perfect family there. Like, come on. Like, what about David, the man after God's own heart? Well, he was kind of like an adulterer and a murderer. Remember those bits? Yeah. Like, the fact is that there isn't a perfect family. There's no perfect family. And so we actually should take heart in that. Take a lot of heart in the fact that that is the case and that is the truth. But parents are the primary disciples. So Full Youth Institute, if you don't follow Full Youth Institute, you should. There's an email that comes out regularly. Dr. Cara Powell would be worth following on Twitter. And anyway, they did a bunch of research a few years ago, and they interviewed heaps of families, heaps of kids, all about faith development and formation. And what they realised and what they discovered was actually nothing new. They affirmed and confirmed all the data which says that parents are the primary disciples. And this is what they found. They found out that the research that they did suggested that parents get the faith for their kids, that parents get the faith in their kids, which is what they have. So essentially their kids' faith is modelled by their own faith, which is quite a scary thing. If you're a parent in the room here today, or you've got kids in your youth ministry who have parents, which is all of us, it's actually quite a scary thing. That authenticity, that genuine faith that's found in the home, that's actually a primary driver in what faith will have in a young person. So for example, if you've got a family that is, say, rocking up to church once every 3 weeks, why, when that young person gets to youth group, would you expect them to want to be there every week? Like, why would you want it? Like, why would you expect that if the parents aren't actually coming to church each week? If the parents are a bit lax and a bit all over the place, well, the kids are also going to have that as well. That's just something that you're going to have to kind of work through. So the parent is the greatest role model in the church and in the community for the young people. Margaret would have talked to you about the 40 hours versus the 3,000 hours, and the 40 hours of structured time in church that approximately a young person will get per year, compared to the 3,000 hours which are unstructured. That's a lot of hours. That's a lot of time. And parents have an opportunity to be involved in that. And some secular research around the developmental assets. And there's 40 developmental assets that looks at the healthy building blocks of a young person in today's society. 4 of these explicitly mention families and parents. So number 1, it says family support. So for a young person to grow up in a healthy way, it says family life provides a high level of love and support. Or number 2, it's a positive family communication. So a young person's well-being is going to increase if they see their parents communicate positively. And a young person will seek advice and counsel from their parents if they see it modelled in how their parents relate and connect with one another. Or number 11 on the assets is family boundaries. And that's family have clear rules and consequences, and they monitor a young person's whereabouts. So a young person will develop healthy in this world in which we live in if they have that. And the 4th one is adult role models. So this is secular research, and it says that parents and other adult role models, if they're positive and they role model responsible behaviour, it will benefit the health and well-being in that young person. There's some secular study on that. It's just wonderful. And I'll never forget hearing Bo Boschers talk about this many years ago. And he talked about young people coming to church and coming to youth group is sort of like conducting a science experiment. And it's like when they come to youth group or they come to church, it's like, the faith that's in them is in a little test tube, and they put some heat under it and it starts to bubble up. But then if they just kind of go home again, what was bubbled up can just cool off. And you come back to youth group or you come back to church and you put some heat and it bubbles up again. And then you step away and it sort of cools off again. And you'll know that tension. You would have felt that in the ministry program in which you run. So the importance of parents, the importance of home, the importance of the orange, it is so important. It's so, so important. So what I want you to do now is I want you to think about your ministry context. I want you to think about the area in which you're responsible for, and I want you to think about are parents in that conversation? Or is it we're just sort of running our own thing? Do we even kind of bring them in? How does it sort of work? Am I focused in on my program and just nailing that and delivering on that? Getting that done? Is it like the tyranny of the urgent? Or am I actually thinking relationally in how we are hand-making these disciples called children, youth and young adults? So have a little think about that, and then talk to the person next to you and just have a couple of minutes, and then we'll jump back in the set. Alright? Go.
Do you have an area?
So I'm a pastor in training, so this term I've been doing church for kids and running youth group, and although I shouldn't be, I still get involved in responsibility for young adults. So every senior. That's great. Church for kids, not as much. It's been tried and struggled with it. Like the people who run it have done their own conferences. youth group run a little bit differently because we have a larger outreach. The more outreach we have, we send our parents a letter, an email, what we're teaching, what's happening at our city service, what the notes from the sermon are, and we'll talk about, we'll send out like the talks from parents to parents and adults, spoken about to parents and adults. Young adults, I think, are a different thing. Our young adults are 18 up, so including their parents can be judgmental sometimes. Unfortunately, in our churches, this is really, really good in theory. Practice it is a different friends and something different.
Alright guys, I might pull you back in, if that's alright. Let you have a little chat. We'll chat for a little bit longer, and then we might do some a little bit of Q&A as well. It's a bit of time, which is good. So, essentially, what we're wanting to do today is just bed down and bed in this paradigm of parents being the primary disciplers. So there's a lot of relational environments, a lot of relational spaces that young people are in all over the place. But one of the ones that we really need to wrestle to the ground is this idea that parents are the primary disciplers. Now I know there's a whole other conversation that can be had with community young people, and what does it look like, you know, in terms of the young people who are reaching out that are part of our groups who don't have parents who are following Jesus, and that we can hit some of that in Q&A if you want. But essentially, you know, in terms of the young people in our church whose parents are following Christ, they are the primary disciplers. So what does it look like to work within this paradigm, and what does it look like to build culture into our churches for that to happen? So important. So I know Margaret would have talked to you about the stages of parental engagement, you know, in a lot of ways, and just touched on this. You know, we've got aware parents, you know, parents that, you know, kind of know what's going on, know what's kind of happening, but kind of like keeping it all at a distance. You know, receive the email, thanks very much, but that's sort of it. You know, then we've got our involved parents, you know, the ones that kind of want to know a little bit more. You might be engaging with them via email, you might not know who they are, or that sort of thing, but they kind of want to get involved, and they might from time to time, you might, you know, send out an email to them from time to time, you know, with a little bit of information. They might reply with, hey, thanks so much, that was great, we're looking for what we can do in our family in this area. You know, they're a bit further along in that journey. And then you've got your engaged parents who want to know what's happening. They want to know how they can be better at the discipling process. They're kind of wrestling with some of this sort of stuff, and then they're kind of like saying, yeah, but how do we take it further? You know, and they might have this idea that they are the primary disciplers, and they might get some of this language around widening the circle, for example, and they might say, I want to make sure that I'm there for others while I'm looking for people to be there for my kids, and all that sort of stuff. They're engaged, and then you've got your invested parents, and your invested parents are the ones that are just sold out. They're the ones that you know, running the retreat for your sons and your dad's trip. You know, they're the ones that are helping run the parent nights. They're the ones that are wanting to help lead as much as they can in life group and things like that. They're the ones that you can ask them to do anything in terms of the discipling process in their family or others, and they'll be all over it and on it. Yeah? So what I want you to do now is I want you to think about your parent community in your church, in your faith community. And I want you to think about just some examples of some parents, and just write this down on your page, this continuum, and I want you to write down names of people that are in each of these stages. And I just want you to get a kind of feel for who's sort of here, who's here, and who's here, because there's a bit of a trend that you'll pick up very quickly. So just have a think about that and start to write down who is there. All right.
Currently 3. Adult. Adults. Yeah, so it's 8 total.
Involved.
Involved.
So what can you tell me? What can you tell me about parents in these stages? Where have you got your most amount of parents, do you think? Where are most of your parents? It's not a trick question. In the middle here?
In between aware and involved.
In there? Yeah. That's where ours are. Yeah. Like that's where most of ours are here. It kind of looks like this in a lot of ways. Kind of starts like that, and it kind of goes like that. For our parents in our community. Yeah. If yours is different, awesome. You know what I'd love? I'd love for yours to go. That'd be awesome. But unfortunately, it's not. I've not seen that as current reality. But yeah, the current reality is that most parents, they don't mind dropping their kid off at church. Whether it's on Friday night, Sunday, they like the fact that the kids get looked after and get taught stuff. And that's all good. And all that sort of thing. But as we get down this sort of way, it gets harder. And I could count on my fingers the amount of totally invested parents that we've got in our community, in youth, not across the generations, but in youth. And that's just our reality. It's just our reality. Because there's this really awkward thing called authenticity. And what kind of happens is when you start to raise the bar on some of this stuff, parents actually go, oh, do I believe this? Or am I doing this because I think it'd be good for my kids? And not everyone can go with it. Or parents are like, oh, I haven't picked up my Bible in a while, Mike. Or oh, I'm good at church, but you should see me at home. And they kind of start to feel the rub of what a disciple looks like in their own lives, because we are calling them to live that because they are the role model to their children. Yeah, and it's just crazy. And that's a real tension point. I remember a couple of years ago, I had a mum come up to me and she said, Mike, I'm having some real trouble. This is just in the coffee line at church. Having some real trouble with my 16-year-old daughter. And I was like, oh yeah, right. I'm the expert on 16-year-old daughters, right? I've got an 8 and a 4-year-old. They're my daughter. When they're 16, I'm going to be a mess. But right now, complete expert. I know what's going on. And anyway, we talked for a little bit, and the daughter's doing all the classic teenager kind of things. And I said, to the mum, I said her name. When was the last time you told her a failure story? When was the last time you told her something where you just totally didn't make it work? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, when was the last time you were just kind of open and vulnerable and told her something that you struggled with when you were 16? And so I just kind of pressed it a little harder, and she's like, what, really? I said, yeah, you remember that thing that we talk about at church, like make it personal? Yeah, that's really important. You know, and if you make it personal, and if her faith story connects with your faith story, you'll join, and instead of butting heads, you'll actually come together and move forward. And it's just in the coffee line, then we just go off, you know, that's it. And she came back to me about a month later, and she said, oh, Mike, she said, thanks so much for that. We went out for coffee and I shared some things, and it's actually helped our relationship, because I'm not now coming across as I've got it all together and I'm perfect, and she's seeing in me that I want to communicate and be on that journey with her. I was like, great, so good. And last year I had an issue with this one boy in youth who was really struggling in his relationship with his dad, and his dad was just not talking, and the boy kind of closed up, felt like he wasn't connecting with his dad and things like that. And I said, oh, when do you guys connect? And the dad says, well, actually, I drive my son to school every day. And he goes to school in towards town, I work in town. We have a 20-minute journey every day on the way to school. And I was like, oh, wow, cool. So what kind of happens in that time? Nothing really. I said, there's your moment. There's your moment to actually pour faith into this young man just by talking about whatever. And then when the important things come up, you can talk about those things as well. And he goes, oh, really? I didn't think you'd want to talk to me. I said, oh, yeah, it's so important. And I've seen their relationship develop as well. Like Margaret would have spoken this morning, first session, about being over time. Little things over time. A 20-minute journey is nothing, but a 20-minute journey, 5 days, a week, you put that into a term, you put that into a year, before you know it, if you use that time intentionally, you're actually growing and you're actually seeing some of this movement. And when that movement starts to happen in a family, it will start to happen in your ministry as well. And then you'll see the ministry improve and grow in this paradigm of partnering with parents. So what we've kind of done from a youth perspective is we've sort of said, okay, this is our job. Our job is to move parents along, all right? So we can't, at the end of the day, families have choice, and they do what they want to do, and they'll buy in or out as much as they want, and all that sort of stuff. That's all fine. But what we're trying to do is move them along. We'd love to move them along the stages. That's what we'd love to do. And if families can begin to get more engaged and invested into the discipleship journey of their young people, and then not just see it as an inward home household thing, but then see it as a bigger story in the ministry, then that's a win, a massive win. So what we've done is we've sort of said, listen, for our parents who are aware and involved, what we want to do is we want to build that awareness. We want to get in your face a little bit. And we want to let you know who we are and what we're on about, and we actually want to speak it up into your world. And we want to kind of get that stuff going. And for the parents who are engaged and invested, well, we want to create opportunities. Because you've got the awareness thing, you get it, and you've sort of got time and you want to grow in that sort of gear. So we want to create opportunities. So I just want to go through a few things with you now, practically how we've built awareness and how we've created opportunity. And to build awareness, so this kind of, awareness involved sort of thing, what we do is we tell our parents, very, very profound. We tell our parents that they're the primary disciples. So we don't shy away from that. We're just straight up. And we're like, you are the primary discipler of your kid. It's just the truth. You can try and outsource it and put your tithe into the offering and think that we are now discipling your kid, but it's wrong. It's not the truth. The truth is you're the primary discipler. You're the main role model. So we tell them that, and we tell them through a few forums. We have a couple of parent nights. So we have a parent night at the start of the year, and then we have one more in the second semester. Sometimes it looks different, but always at the start of the year we kind of map out where the year's going, look for opportunities, get feedback from them and all that sort of stuff. I send out regular emails, so about once a month I'd send out an email to our parent community, which take back a step. It means that you need a database that can hold parent email addresses and things like that, so you actually know that you're emailing your parents when you do. So you need to make sure that's squared away for you as well. Clean database is really important. So we send out emails, and in those emails I'll use that language of them being the primary disciplers. I'll say, here's an article, or I step through the developmental assets, if there's some stuff that's coming through on, how do we work with young people in pornography or something like that, I'll send it through to our parents and I'll say, this is, I'm sure an issue in your house, it is in many. Here's some strategies or some things that we've picked up that might be useful for you as the primary disciples. We actually use that language. We get on the front foot with some of that. And we hold a Year 6 graduation. And during that graduation, Margaret and I talk about the fact that as a parent community, they are the primary disciples. And that's such an important way of actually speaking it up. So we let them know that we're partnering with them. This whole idea of language preceding culture is so important. So if you're going to speak it up, over time it will get into the language, into the culture of the church. And we speak this language across our generational ministries. So it's just not a youth thing. It's just not a kids thing. It's just not a young adult thing. It's not something that we're doing random or anything like that. But it's actually more structured and it's actually much more intentional. And this is where these kind of cones come into play. Because as we put down cones in our ministry, we actually are creating and we're building an alignment. And we can actually set the direction of where we want to go by the cones that we put down. And if I put these cones down, just out on Springfield Road here, we could start to change where traffic goes. Maybe not these ones, they may be a little small. We might have to get bigger ones. But you know what I mean. And this is how we see it at Crossway in terms of if we put down the right cones in the right way and we speak the same language and we have that culture of alignment in what we're trying to do around this bigger picture of partnering with parents, we're going to see some movement, we're going to see some change. So it's really important if you're not talking this up, if you're a youth pastor, if you're not talking up with your children's pastor or young adults pastor or how that sort of works in your world, then you can kind of like lose that opportunity because you might be doing some cool stuff around this, but you actually need to make sure it goes up the way and down the way. And if you're kids like Margaret's primary place, then she's got to make sure it goes up because she doesn't want to do all this awesome work with the kids and they get to me and it's like it all goes because there's a whole new strategy, a whole new way of thinking, a whole new set of language to learn and things like that. It's just not right. It's not savvy. And so to actually have a strategy that kind of has that alignment and speaks it up is so important and so helpful for parents. Because you're not kind of like, switching things around and it's not resting on a personality, but it can just be moved forward no matter who's sort of driving it because it's the culture in which the church is at. So, we've been able to do that. Margaret has brought in some language with orange and we've been able to use that in youth. So, like widening the circle, having multiple adults in the life of a young person, that's awesome. If I tried to do that with our teenagers, it'd just kill me. But we can talk up to parents and say, parents, you're responsible as a primary disciplers to make sure there's a few extra adults that you recommend that are around the life of your kids. So it's actually really important. And what that does is it builds awareness. It builds awareness in the life of the parents, and it's really important. As a part of that, like I said, increased communication and relationship building is so important. So you guys as the point leaders, it's so important that you're in the foyer, you're saying hello. It's so important that you're in the car park saying g'day. It's so important that you're present and that you're available and that people get to know you, and especially parents, because as they kind of like get into this, as they think about this, stuff's going to come up in their life, and they're going to want to talk some stuff through, and you're going to need to be a trusted person. So it's been really important that you're present, so that you can actually do some of this. Last year we had a year where we had a lot more pastoral issues than we've had previous years. And I'm convinced that we didn't have a bad year in terms of kids just going crazy. What I'm actually convinced about is that as this has bedded down, this language has bedded down into the culture of our church, parents feel safer to actually come and talk. Because the issues were there anyway. The issues aren't new. They're there every year, with kids that are going through similar stuff because it's a crazy world and it's hard. But what I'm convinced of is that more parents felt safer to come and talk to us about what was really going on. So we actually got behind a layer. you know, we've got behind the layer. And that's relational discipleship. Because you're actually getting into the real life and not the performance-orientated, you know, veneer or mask that families want you to see. That's real, that's life, that's real discipleship stuff. It's so important. So I just wonder, how in your context can you build awareness? How in your context can you go from a parent just being aware of what's going on to maybe being a bit more involved in the life and discipling journey of their young person? So just think about that. I've given you a few, but just think about now, what are some ideas, maybe one or two takeaways that you can take from today, building awareness in the life of your parents. Just have a think and write a couple of things down.
Parents think it's actually the job of the pastoral Sunday school team, raise the kids in the class. Take that into model. Excellent. Shows them as such.
Guys, I'll grab you back. I'll grab you back in because I want to move us on. So our job is to help our parents and push them through these stages. I just want to give us some thoughts on working with engaged and invested parents. Now, engaged and invested parents, awesome. They're like your best friends, and you got to really listen up. And if they're speaking some stuff up to you about it's going well, great, that's awesome. But if they're speaking some stuff up that they're concerned about, you got to listen up. All right, they're giving you some honest and open feedback. You got to really take that on board. But what we've done is we haven't tried to do more in terms of our engaged and invested parents, but what we've tried to do is put a parent lens. Sort of like if you had some goggles, you know, or some glasses, and you put them on, and you just run a parent lens through it. You know, that's what we've tried to do with this sort of zone, because what we've tried to do is say, okay, what are we already doing? How does it work? And how can we run a parent lens over that so that more parents can be mobilised in equipping their young people, you know, with faith, their own, but then also others as well. So that's what we've tried to do. And I want you to, as we talk about this, I want you to think about, if you put a parent lens over your engaged and invested parents, what would it look like? And how could you mobilise them? How could you kind of like pull the lever down on those guys some more? So what we've tried to do, and these are just some examples, we each term will have a theme in what we do, and for a youth group we run what we call a 4-4-2, so we have 4 like youth services, 4 small group nights, life groups, and 2 outreach nights. It's sort of just how we structure it up, and from time to time what we'll do is we'll just hit some big issues. So we've looked at things, you know, like you know, classic stuff from pornography through to self-harm, through to, you know, social media, you know, all these kind of things that young people sort of go through. And when we've done these bigger type issues, we've ran a parent curriculum, what we've called table talk, alongside of that. And what we've done is we've just put this little bit of material together. It's not much, but what it's meant to, and it's aimed to do, is to be catalytic in starting conversations around the tea table. So we're saying, hey, hopefully you already eat together. So we're sort of like just pressing that. Hopefully eating around a table, so we're pressing that. So eating together and not in front of a TV, that's important. Let's have these conversations. And so we're kind of like just pushing that a little bit. And then we're saying, twice a week, why don't you have some more intentional conversation? And we just tried to like bed that into the culture of our parent community. And, some take it up, some don't, that's okay, but we're also putting it out there to say this is important. What we do as well is that we run an annual camp, like most of you would. So we run camp anyway, right? But what we thought is, how could we make it a bit more parent-focused so that the parents could take some of the wins that happen on camp and then bring that into the home?
I've stolen your thunder.
Oh, you talked about that already?
We did.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, cool. So that's good. So did you talk about the emails and talk about the camp? Yeah. See, that was great. See, that's the advantage of being first.
That's your
Is that you get to kind of take it. But it's my own fault that I'm second. So that's fine. Yeah, I'll take that.
It's just one of these things that happen.
Yeah, it just came out. Yeah.
Go figure that out.
The thing though, the best thing about that, and you've already got the gold on that, but one of the genius pieces is that, kids after a 5-day experience are just absolutely fried, right? They're totally fried, they just need to sleep. Mum and Dad will say, how was camp? And they'll just say, and that's it. Get a grunt out of a 14-year-old boy. Woohoo! But like, we can equip the parents to say, hey, just chill, it's all right. But when they, get some sleep and you've fed them again with some real food, this is the question to ask. Bang! Hit them with this. Parents love it. They totally love it. They're like, this is amazing. $300 well spent, And that is really important. But I'll just leave that alone. We've been trying to increase parents more and more in our life groups with limited success. But what we've tried to say to parents who have the right character for it, we just said, listen, when you can come. Because we realise that you work and there's pressures and things like that. But then we've tried to put some of our parents who have had youth leader experience when they were younger into more kind of like senior roles within year levels. So like this guy, Kingsley, and he's sort of like one of the dads, and he kind of loves kind of coming along, but he can't all the time. But what we try and do is put him in a role where he looks after some of our younger leaders. So he's actually like this cascading leadership effect, but he is totally engaged and invested. So we create an opportunity for him to give a little bit more. I don't expect Kingsley to have the same buy-in as I do some of the younger leaders, but what Kingsley can give on less time, is massive. It's really good. So just look for those opportunities like that as well. Last year we did a parenting course, and it was for teenagers, and we blended some orange and sticky faith gear in all of that. And what was great about that was run by 2 of our invested parents. It was awesome. They wanted to serve more. I said, I think we need to equip our parents a little bit more. Here's like a DVD and some information. And they took it away and they ran with it. And we ran that last year, and it was great and yeah, really brilliant. So who is it? In your context that could do something like that. You don't need to do it all, yeah? You shouldn't be. So who can be doing that for you? And we've got this little initiative that we do, which is for our year 7s, because 13 is a pretty key age for boys. And I always get questions about this. So what about for the girls? And I'm still waiting for some mums to put up their hand and say, let's do it, because we can't do it all. But a couple of the dads came to me a few years ago and said, oh, listen, can we just do this thing where we train up the dads about the importance of a boy sort of hitting 13 and look at kind of like an Australian appropriate kind of like rite of passage thing, They don't want to kind of go out and like shoot stuff, but they're like, how can we kind of like help these guys come into adulthood and things like that. And so what we do is we have a couple of training sessions with the dads in year 7 and we talk to them about stuff. And I found that the first one of those I went to a few years ago, I was like, came with all this information and I was ready to kind of like, teach these guys. And then it was like, I didn't use any of the stuff that I had because the dads just got around the table and talked. And it was awesome. It was so awesome. And from that came guys that wanted to then be involved in the future. And then we took the boys away for an overnighter, just a simple overnighter. And it was just like they ate steak and chips and no green stuff. It was like banned. And pretty much just played games and had fun for a day with their sons and the dads, and then the next morning had a worship time, and each dad spoke a word over their son, and they prepared it, and they said, son, I'm so proud of you because of this, and I want to see you become a man who is this. And every time it's just amazing, like, because the dads are speaking from their heart. There's tears, which is rare for dads, but it was very special. And then 2 years ago we had a boy in Year 7 who didn't have a dad. His dad isn't around anymore, so he still came away with the other dads, and that weekend, that overnight, he had 13 dads, and they all got around him, and it was really profound. And I know when I'm talking about this stuff, it affects me, and hopefully it affects you, because it's actually what it's about. Because disciples are handmade, they're not mass-produced, and we need to look for these opportunities where that stuff could happen more and more. And then what we've done as well is that we've got around some of our female leaders, because we're changing now, but we've had a male-dominated staff. So, like, we got around some of our female leaders and said we'd love to get one of the older ladies in the church, a mum or someone like that, to come and like sit with you once a month and have some chats and do that sort of stuff. So we've had some of our parents who have been invested in the past come in and meet monthly with our female leaders. And I just said, listen, just catch up and become friends. And after a few months, maybe have like 2 or 3 questions that you ask. And they kind of do that. And that seems to have worked quite well in most cases, because it's a bit hard because of chemistry and stuff and being a big church and stuff like that. But what I've found is that actually there are mums in our church, and there'll be mums in your church, that once they kind of like see their kids through school, they kind of say, what next? What is it for me? And I've had more than 2 mums come to me and say, Mike, I didn't really know what my next step was. You know, I've tried the life group leading, and that's okay, but it just wasn't like filling something in me like it was when I used to help out the youth, or, you know, this or that. And this has really given me something to put my skill set into. You will have in your church some crazy skilled people in their 50s and their 60s that are so important to get them alongside some of your 20s. It's so important, and you can't underestimate intergenerational relationships. And some of the newer research on that is saying that that needs to increase more and more. So anyway, we've kind of like played around with that a little bit, and that's something where we've tried to create opportunity for more of our engaged and invested parents. So that's kind of like all I want to kind of share. I just want you to have 5 minutes or just a couple of minutes of reflection and think, if I run a parent lens over my ministry, all that I do, and all who we are and all that sort of stuff, what are some things that I don't have to like radically change, but what can I tweak to become more intentional to actually demonstrate that parents are the primary disciplers and actually helps move parents across the stages. All right, have a think and a reflect, and then we'll get Margaret up on her feet again and we'll have a little Q&A. All right?
I wasn't blessed like that. No. We haven't had
Alright guys, if there's any questions, let's kind of throw around. If you want to get an early minute, whatever you need to do.
Got the Daniel.
Yeah, something that I'm struggling with at the moment is I've got some big pastoral issues with some of my youth and adults. The parents don't know about everything that's going on. And there's a tension that I'm struggling with between wanting to just go and tell their parents everything and say, look, here's everything that's going on. I want to help you deal with that. Let's talk about how you deal with that at home. But then also wanting to respect the trust that I have in the relationship with the kid who's come to me and not mum and dad. And if it was something as serious as this kid is talking about killing themselves, then of course I would go straight to the parents. But it's stuff that is, in and of itself, like it doesn't fall into my duty of care of like, you must go tell parents because this is serious harm. But it is stuff that is starting to head down that way. You know, it's not positive behaviour, it's not forming good habits, it's not helping them become more Christ-like. It's normal teenage stuff, I guess, but it's not. I would feel more comfortable if I could go to parents and say, here's everything, but I know that if I do that, that's going to break trust with kids. And I wonder how some of you guys sort of stride that and how you, where do you find a balance?
Yeah, no, great question. And
maybe I would like to suggest encouraging the children go to talk to their parents.
Yeah, and I do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the best way.
Yeah. So
And also make the parent and the children have a communication during the work.
Yeah, and there's factors in there as well, is that sometimes, you know, the parents, you know, don't get what's going on, or they'll freak out, or, you know, like, you know, we've got one parent, a lot of parents in our community right now where we're dealing with this ongoing concern, and I don't feel like the parents are as concerned as they should be, you know, and you get those situations as well. So, yeah, as the adult, pastoral caring for young people, over the years what I've tried to do is drive those conversations to the home. So sometimes you don't get there in one conversation, sometimes it can take multiple conversations, but if things are squared away at home, and if things are squared away at home and you feel like parents need to come in on this, as the adult I generally drive the conversation that way, and because I have influence and have that you know, relationship with the young person, even if they're not 100% sold on it, most of the time I've found that they'll trust you in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So with them is what you're talking about.
Totally. Yeah.
So you're part of the conversation with the young person and with their parent.
Yeah.
So that young person will know you are with them while you're talking to the parents. So it actually allows them, if you ask them to go talk about it by themselves, and that's a big ask for a young person to bring it up. How do you even do that? But what you hear you saying, like you're in the midst and you actually form a communication and you pull out, and then these guys can talk to.
Yeah, and you kind of take on that facilitator role, but like I said, you don't. From my experience, you don't always get there in that first conversation with a young person. Like it's something where you've got to maybe drop the seed, but if you're firm in part of your love for them is to make sure that they aren't going down this pathway, it's really important that you're straight up on that. And you know, and that's part of, like we talk about the invitation and the challenge. If you're not into 3DM, like the 3DM stuff with Mike Breen is brilliant. And he talks about sometimes we have high invitation and we have low challenge, and it doesn't create a discipling culture, it creates more of a cozy culture. But if you've got a higher invitation, a higher challenge, it's more of an empowering discipling zone. And what I found over the years is that if you can lead that conversation down to that facilitated conversation like Margaret was sharing, you'll actually see a bigger win than actually just saying, you know, you've got to do this and then you come back out. Like you actually walk with them and hold their hand a little bit through that conversation. And then with their parents, you actually say, because parents don't always feel equipped for this stuff, you know, like freaking out. And so another pastoral situation I've just been dealing with between a couple of kids where stuff went a bit crazy. And the parents came to me and said, we don't know what to do. And I was like, it's pretty straight what we need to do. But they had no idea. And I'm guessing when my 17-year-old is in that situation, I'm not going to know what to do with it because I'm probably going to punch someone in the face because there's all these emotions and stuff. So you actually need that sage person with poise, who is you, Andy, to actually walk alongside and to give that advice and to have that commitment to care. And I've found that if you drive it that way, 9.5 times out of 10 you'll get a win. And if the kid doesn't want you to kind of do that, there could be something else going on. You know, in terms of stuff when parents aren't great, just sort of making stuff up for attention, whatever it is. But you get to the bottom of that stuff pretty quick. Yeah. So, is that cool?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. Are we good?
Yeah.
Can I pray for us? Is that alright? Yeah, that'd be great. Lord, I want to thank you so much for this day. These last 2 days, Lord, where this learning's occurred. Lord, I pray for each one in the room, each one that's been here over these last 2 days. Lord, I pray for your blessing to be upon them. Lord, as they've taken time out of doing things that are important, Lord, and spent this time learning and hearing from you, I pray that you have spoken deeply into their hearts. And I pray for their takeaways from this to be real and relevant into their ministry and family context. So bless them. Help these guys in the room, Lord, right now be great parents, great sons and daughters, great siblings. And Lord, pray your empowerment over them as ministers of the gospel. So bless them. We thank you for them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank Mike there are just a couple of resources left, but if you weren't able to get anything that you would like to, you can contact the BUV or contact Margaret directly and we can get you in contact with any of those resources. Trust you have had a great day and blessings upon you as you head back to your homes and coffees or whatever you're doing the rest of the day.